Okay. Well, with that, Chair Scott, we can call the meeting to order.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to call this quarterly meeting of the Texas State University System Board of Regents to order. This meeting is authorized under Government Code Chapter 551 regarding the Open Meeting Act as amended by the 76th Legislature effective September the 1st, 1999. The agenda for this meeting was registered with the Secretary of State on May the 18th, 2020. For the record, the date is May the 21st, 2020, and the time is 1 p.m.
Okay.
I'd like to state that a quorum of the board is present, all regents attending. Before we get started, I'd like to ask that you please mute your microphones unless you're called upon or need to speak. I'd now like to ask Regent Tinsley to deliver our invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear God, in the midst of this challenging time in which we live, we pray for our families, friends, and communities. We pray for life and health and a ground of faith to guide us daily through these tough times. And we pray for sustaining faith when we reach the other side of this crisis, when life is back to normal. A sustaining faith that helps us appreciate the value of life, love, and friendship. The kind of faith that reminds us daily that we are not an island unto ourselves. The kind of faith that reminds us that no social distancing can truly separate us from our goal to make informed decisions to benefit the students, faculty, administration, and the various components of the Texas State University system. Bless us and keep us from harm. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Alan.
Sure.
I'd like to welcome everyone to our first and hopefully our last virtual Board of Regents meeting in our system's 109-year history. Thank you all for being present today in what are unprecedented times for our system, country, and the world. We hope all our TSUS family are safe and well. The system looks forward to opening our colleges and university in the summer and fall so students can start to return to normal classes. At this time, I'll ask Chancellor McCall to share some updates with you. Dr. McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, this is, as the chairman said, a unique way to have a board meeting. In its 109 years, this is the first time, as far as we can tell, that we have not met as a body in person. This is my 40th Board of Regents meeting. And not only is it my 40th, it's Vice Chancellor Sean Cunningham's 40th board meeting. And it's Deputy Vice Chancellor Mike Winnemute's 40th Board of Regents meeting. So we have attended almost 10% of the meetings in its 109-year history as of today. It has been my privilege to work with Vice Chancellor Cunningham for almost 30 years. And he has been a great person to learn from and work with. As you know, Mike Winnemute carries two titles. He's the executive director of the Texas State University System Foundation and the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Marketing and Communications. Or rather, he was. Today, we're retiring his title of Deputy Vice Chancellor for Marketing and Communications and giving him a title with a better ring. Mike, you're our newest Vice Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor for Marketing and Communications. We're so glad you do what you do the way you do it. You make us all look good and you give us good advice. So congratulations, Mike. I also want to introduce you, if you've not met, to the pending your approval, the new president of Sul Ross State University, Mr. Pete Gallego, the first graduate of Sul Ross State University ever to become president, a native of Alpine, a man who knows people everywhere and those whom he meets, they like. A guy who has a good vision for what Sul Ross can be. And I'd like you to meet Pete Gaggo. Pete, if you'd like to say a word or two.
Thank you so much, Chancellor McCall. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be involved with Sul Ross State University. I tell people often that Sul Ross is kind of in my DNA. My parents met in 1946 on the steps of one of the dormitories on the Alpine campus. My sisters have gone to Sul Ross. I have a degree from Sul Ross, and in a very real way, Sul Ross gave me my, it opened the door for me for so many different opportunities. And so I love the place, I love the people, I love the region, I love the history. And I also know a good bit about all 4 of the Sul Ross campuses, having served them for quite a while, a total of 24 years in public office. And so that history will serve me well as I take the baton from Dr. Kibler. And I'm looking forward very much to working with each and every one of you, finding out your vision for Sul Ross and how we can together make Sul Ross a much better university as we go to the year, the next 10-year cycle will be for 2030, what it is that we want this university to look like. So I look forward to working with you on that vision. And I have to say, one more time, underscore my gratitude for this opportunity. I am super, super, super excited about the opportunity to give back to Sul Ross in Del Rio, in Eagle Pass, in Uvalde, and in Alpine.
And of course, we're grateful to Bill Kibler for his many years of service, more about which later in the meeting. Well, Regents, we've weathered a troubled spring and we're planning for an uncertain fall. I got to tell you, I'm particularly proud of our professors who moved 12,000 classes online in 2 weeks' time. We've shown that we can adapt, and we've adapted, and we continue to adapt. The most important factor in moving back onto campuses is the safety of our students, faculty, and staff. And I can assure you that our presidents and their cabinets and the system office are working to make certain that we have the safest possible environment for people to work, study, live, and learn. There are 4 things that we're dealing with. Health fears, of course, increased and added costs due to the safety measures that we have to put in place. Diminished state support. We learned yesterday that we are to cut our budgets by 5%, with a possibility of another 5%. Vanishing tuition income, should students not come back, and reduced income from student housing. Keep in mind, I know you already know, but remember there are only 4 areas where we have sources of income. The state support, which is about 25% of our total income. Tuition, auxiliary services, housing and food services, and donations and endowments. Let me tell you something I'm most pleased about. And that is the work that our presidents have done over the past 10 years. In 20 years, we set a number of goals to be realized in 2020. And because of a lag year, that will be a year from now. But with regard to endowments and fundraisings and annual givings, let me just tell you that in endowments, we're up 133%. We're 9% over our goal for 2020, which is next year. We have a year left. Annual giving, we're up 83%. Capital campaign fundraising, up 73%, and we're already 4% over our goal, and we have a year left to go. So while this is a difficult period, the labor market is weak. There are not a lot of jobs right now. But when the economy comes back, we'll need skilled workers. And higher education remains the best solution for a bad economy. I expect that any enrollment drop-off will be temporary as recessions tend to send millions back to school. College enrollment increased by 13% between 2007 and the peak of 2011. Texas State, as you already know, as well as I do, has such talented, smart people working harder than you can imagine. And we're not only going to get through this, but we'll be stronger and better on the other end. It's not easy, but it's going to hone us and make us better. And I just want to thank all the people on all the campuses and in the system office for doing what you've done so well. I've never heard one complaint from anyone through this whole process. It's a get her done attitude. And I'm delighted and appreciative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chancellor. And Pete, it's nice to have you on the call. And Mike, congratulations to you as well. And I'd like to take this opportunity now to recognize somebody else, Katie McCall, our student regent, for her service and outstanding participation. Katie was present on many, if not all, our committee calls, as well as all our board meetings. We enjoyed and appreciate her contributions to the board. Were we all face to face, we'd give her a round of applause. But let me just say that we'll miss her, and we look forward to keeping up with her as she goes through and finishes graduating and moves on. As we get started with our regular business meeting, I'd like to let the board know that for this meeting, we'll simplify the approval of motions after each item, report, or motion. And I will ask the board whether there's any discussion or objection. If I hear none, then I'll state that hearing no objection, the motion passes and move on to the next item. Please understand that we want you to speak up if you have any objection or questions. We don't mean to reduce anyone's participation. We're just trying to streamline the process a little bit. I'll also remind all present, we're streaming this meeting live on the internet for public consumption. Please silence your phones. As if they get a ring, we don't want to interrupt the transmission, and maintain your computer microphones on mute until you need to speak during the meeting. Our first item is of business is the approval of the previous meeting minutes. They're found in the board book. I move that the minutes of the quarterly board meeting held on February the 13th and 14th, 2020 be approved.
So moved. This is Charlie.
Thank you, Charlie.
Second, Regent Harrell.
Very good. Any discussion or objection? And the motion passes. And guys, you don't have to do the motions in seconds. We're going to streamline it a little bit so we can move a little quicker. The next order of business is the ratification and approval of the location changes for today's meeting and for the August 2020 quarterly Board of Regents meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm going to make the motion that the decision rendered necessary by the COVID-19 pandemic to change today's quarterly board meeting, formerly scheduled to be held at Conroe, Texas on May the 22nd, 2020, to this virtual format be ratified. And I move that the quarterly board meeting formerly scheduled to be held in Austin, Texas on August 13th, 14th, 2020 be moved to Sam Houston State University College of Osteopathic Medicine in Conroe, Texas on the same dates. Are there any objections or questions? Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll now hear reports and motions from the committees. The committees met by phone prior to the board meeting to consider proposed agenda items in detail. All items under consideration were voted on and referred by the committees to the full board. I'll call on each committee chair to present the reports and make motions if necessary to the full board for consideration. And our first committee is Academic and Health Affairs Committee. Regent Crane, Chair. Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had to unmute and had some unexpected technical difficulties there for a second. All right, Mr. Chairman, the Academic and Health Affairs Committee met telephonically on Monday, May the 11th, 2020, and it was chaired by me. With committee members, Regent Edwards and Regent Harrell were also in attendance. Regent Flores and our honored student Regent Katie McCall were also on the telephonic committee meeting, and representatives from our institutions and system staff were also in attendance. Because of our meeting format today, I will make a motion for approval of each one of the items. And Chairman Scott will he'll then ask for a discussion or objections from the regents before the motion passes. So we go right to, let's see, I've got 5 agenda items here. Let's go to number 1. And that's for Lamar University, a new degree in the Master of Science in Hospitality Leadership. I move that Lamar University be authorized to offer an online Master of Science in Hospitality Leadership degree effective fall 2021. Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Regent Crane. Is there any discussion or objections? Hearing none, the motion passes. Regent Crane.
All right. Mr. Chairman, the next one is also Lamar University, and I make the motion that Lamar University be authorized to add a new Master of Arts in Deaf Studies effective fall 2020. Chairman Scott.
Are there any questions, comments, or objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
All right, the third item is Sul Ross State University. I move that Sul Ross State University be authorized to add a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, which would be a BSN, effective July 1, 2020. Chairman Scott.
Okay, motion made by Regent Crane. Are there any questions, objections, or comments? Hearing none, the motion passes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that Lamar State University at Orange be authorized to create a new program leading to a dual credit certificate in process technology that would be effective for the fall 2020 semester. Chairman Scott.
Is there any discussion or objections or comments? If there are none, the motion passes.
All right, the last thing I have on my list is an informational item. It's for Texas State University System, and it's the preliminary enrollment report for spring 2020. The certified spring enrollment report will be reviewed at the August board meeting. And that doesn't require anything, I don't believe, Mr. Chairman. So any remaining items are included in the consent agenda, unless, of course, someone wishes to remove something or an item from the consent. Other than that, Chairman Scott, that concludes the committee's report to the board.
Thank you, Regent Crane. And I didn't hear any objections to moving all the consent items. So all the consent items are moved to the consent agenda. Our next committee report is Finance and Audit Committee by Regent Alan Tinsley, Chair. Regent Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance and Audit Committee met on May 14, 2020 to discuss finance and audit items included in today's agenda. I chaired the meeting and Regents Flores, Montaigne, and Scott participated. Regent Harrell and Student Regent McCall were also in attendance. The committee considered all items, and the committee agreed to move each item to today's meeting for the board's consideration. The first item for consideration is SHSU authorization of set meal plan rates. Mr. Chairman, I move that Sam Houston State University proposed summer 2020 meal plan rates be approved. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Regent Tinsley, for that motion. Any discussion or objections? Hearing none, the motion passes.
The next item for consideration is also SHSU, a Master's in Education and School Leadership Program fee. Chairman Scott, I move that Sam Houston State University be authorized to establish a Master's in Education and School Leadership Program fee at $395.25 per semester credit hour effective fall 2020 and $413.25 per semester credit hour effective fall 2021 for resident students. Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion or objection to this motion? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you. The next item is also Sul Ross University Teacher Education Program fee. Chairman Scott, I move that Sul Ross State University be authorized to charge a teacher education program Block 1 and Block 2 fee of $35 per semester and Block 3 fee of $200 per semester, beginning in the fall 2020 semester. Mr. Chairman.
Is there any discussion or objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion passes.
The next agenda item is TSUS Debt Management Policy. Chairman Scott, I move that the debt management policy dated May 2020 be adopted. Mr. Chair.
Is there any discussion or objection to this motion? Hearing none, the motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is an informational item concerning the quarterly operating budget adjustments. The remaining items are included in the consent agenda, deferring the effective date of the investment policy revisions to September 1st and the quarterly quasi-endowment reports. Before we conclude, I've asked Daniel to provide a brief update on our property renewal and auto insurance program. Daniel?
Thank you, Regent Tinsley. So as the board knows, system administration supports a system-wide risk program through an operating committee of institutional representatives. Through that, we coordinate the purchase of various lines of insurance, which include both property, auto, directors and officers, crime, cyber, etc. We recently bound our property insurance program. It was a challenging renewal, but we got it done. The premium is up around 37% to now 5.7 million. That is due to both an increase in the values are up almost 13% to 4.3 billion. And our rate is up to 13 cents per $100 of value, which is a 22% increase. Again, as I said, it's a challenging renewal. Our average rate since we had a standalone program is still at 11 cents, noting that our rate prior to having a standalone program was averaging 16 cents, and it was at 20 cents when we chose to leave. We had to make a few deductible changes nationally, there's an increase push for a hail deductible on a per unit of value, which we previously did not have. And then the all other peril deductible, we needed to increase for Texas State, Sam Houston, and Lamar. We were able to maintain our named wind limit, which is great for our Southeast Texas institutions. As I'm sure Regent Amato knows and others, the global insurance market is hardening. It's being much tougher on the insured. Globally, the modeling is less favorable. There's higher losses, which yields to higher rate. And then TSUS itself has had some tough years with Harvey and Imelda, and then some attritional losses across the campuses. So again, I mean, it's a challenging renewal, but we were happy to get it done, and look forward to improving our program next year to hopefully avoid this a rate increase in the future, and hopefully look to get back down to that kind of 10-11 cent rate where we have been for the past 8 years. But on a positive note, I wanted to give y'all also an update on the auto insurance program. As y'all recall, at the November board meeting, we switched to a high retention auto program. Our old program was similar to your traditional personal auto, and it had low deductibles. Our liability was $5,000, and our physical damage was $1,000. The premium on that program, if we were to renew, would have been $530,000 for approximately 2,000 automobiles. And our claims paid on average was $100,000 a year under the old program. We moved to a high retention program where we kept the same deductibles for the institutions, but we collectively created a self-insurance fund with $260,000 to be paid over 2 years. And that allowed us to increase our deductibles in that self-insurance portion to $50,000 for physical damage and $25,000 for auto. Reduced our premium by $300,000 a year. So we expect to see, and we have had great claims this year, and so we are looking at a $300,000 savings on our auto program for this fiscal year. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my brief update on our 2 insurance renewals.
Thank you, Daniel. If there's no questions or any further discussion, this concludes the Finance and Audit Committee's report. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Regent Tinsley. Our next item of business is planning and construction, and Regent Montaigne will present the planning and construction agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Planning and Construction Committee met on Tuesday, May 12th, 2020 to discuss planning and construction agenda. Chairman Scott chaired the meeting, and Regents Austin and I participated. Regent Flores, Harrell, and Student Regent McCall were also in attendance. The committee considered all items and agreed to move each item to today's meeting for the board's consideration. The first item for consideration is Texas State design and development documents for the Round Rock Campus Services Building. Mr. Chairman, I move that the design development documents for the Round Rock Campus Services Building project at Texas State University be approved. Mr. Chair.
Is there any discussion or objection to this motion? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, the next item for consideration is Texas State University Systems Capital Improvement Program. Mr. Chair, I move that the capital improvements program for fiscal years 2021 through 2026 be adopted. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any discussion or objection to this motion? Hearing none, the motion passes.
The next item on the agenda is an informational item that needs no action, the quarterly planning and construction report. Mr. Chairman, the remaining items included in the consent agenda, in addition to the 2020-25 capital improvements program, and needs no action. If there's not any questions, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Planning and Construction Committee's report.
Very good. Thank you, Regent Montaigne. Our next committee is Rules and Regulations. Regent Veronica Edwards, Committee Chair.
Thank you, Chairman.
Veronica.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. The Rules and Regulations Committee met by telephone on Tuesday, May the 12th, 2020, and discussed the items on the Rules and Regulations agenda. I chaired the meeting, which was also attended by committee members Regent Flores and Regent Tinsley, Board Chairman Scott, Regent Harrell, and Student Regent McCall. The Chancellor and representatives at the System Administration Office and the component institutions were also present. The meeting was duly posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Law. Committee voted unanimously to recommend that all agenda items dealing mostly with administrative matters be placed on the consent agenda, and unless any regent would like to move one of these rules to the meeting agenda, the committee recommends that they remain a part of the consent agenda. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the Rules and Regulations Committee's report.
Very good. And hearing no objections, those rules are moved to the consent agenda. Our next committee is Governmental Relations. Regent David Montaigne. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Vice Chancellor for Governmental Relations recently circulated a comprehensive update to the boards and presidents for their review, so I will not read it in full. Instead, I'll give you a few highlights on specific Texas State University System federal outreach, CARES Act, funding from Congress, and let you read the more detailed update. Before the coronavirus, COVID-19 is what I always say, disrupted all facets of life. Texas State University System presidents, Chancellor McCall and Vice Chancellor Cunningham traveled to Washington in late February for our annual DC President's Flying. During the visit, Texas State University System met with numerous members of our congressional delegation, as well as senior officials, Department of Labor, Interior, and Education. Furthermore, TSUS had the opportunity to meet with President Trump's STEM education team at the White House to update them on our system-wide collaborative STEM initiative. And lastly, the visit also included meeting with senior officials from the American Petroleum Institute to explore partnership opportunities for a number of our system institutions. As most of you already know, much of the federal government focus the past several months has been devoted to mitigating the worst effects of the COVID-19 outbreak. Shortly after our fly-in, Congress churned out 3 bills to support frontline healthcare workers as they confront healthcare components of the crisis, as well as dole out assistance to individuals, small businesses, corporations, and specific key industries, including higher education, as they deal with the economic fallout. An additional interim stimulus bill, phase 3.5, was signed into law in late April that authorized further relief for small businesses and hospitals and federal aid to support the state and local virus testing. The CARES Act was the largest and most substantive federal emergency appropriation passage passed in March and allocated over $2 trillion in federal funding to various parts of the economy, including $14.25 billion for all sectors of higher ed. Texas's portion of the governor's emergency relief fund is around $308 million, shared between public ed and higher ed. Final amounts are to still be determined by Governor Abbott. The total amount of institutional allocations for our system is $31 million and another $31 million for emergency grants to students within our system. On April 30th, Secretary DeVos announced the department was accepting applications for $1.4 billion fund set aside for minority serving institutions, including several Hispanic serving institutions and the TSUS system. The funding was in addition to the institution's student-directed tranches. According to recent allocations posted for this fund, some of our Texas State University System institutions will see a portion of $3.7 million to be allocated to our system. Phase 4, since CARES Act was passed in late March, many lawmakers in both chambers have stressed the need for additional assistance to ailing segments of the economy. Proposals for 4 are pending and some red lines have been drawn. Republicans are adamant that any additional funding should include liability protection for businesses operating in COVID-19 world. President Trump has tweeted that a payroll tax cut is a requirement for his support. Democrats, for their part, have stressed the need for additional aid to state and local governments, and Speaker Pelosi has passed a package with a price tag of about $3 trillion that the House sent over to the Senate. We shall stay tuned and update you with the latest information. Unless there's no questions, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the GR committee report.
Thank you, Regent Montaigne, and no action is required on this report. The board will now consider contracts, personnel, miscellaneous items. The next order of business is approval of contracts. All the items on the contracts section have been moved to the consent agenda. Are there any questions from the board or any items that the board would like to remove? Any board member would like to remove? And Dr. Gomez is available to answer any questions you may have. If there are no objections, these items are moved to the consent agenda. The next order of business is personnel. The only item is the personnel report for Texas State University. And if there are no objections, these shall be moved to the consent agenda. Do we hear any objections? Thank you. The next order of business is miscellaneous section. The first item under miscellaneous is from Sul Ross State University to authorize the naming of the Museum of the Big Bend Complex to the Emmett and Miriam McCoy Building in grateful recognition of the McCoys' many contributions to higher education in the state of Texas. Dr. Kibler, would you like to make any comments regarding this naming opportunity?
Sure, I'd be glad to. It's very significant for Sul Ross, one of which is this is the largest single gift in the history of Sul Ross State University, a $5 million gift that came from the McCoy family, from Miriam McCoy specifically, enabling us to really fast forward and achieve much sooner the achievement of our vision to not only double the size of the Museum of the Big Bend, but even probably more than double its impact and its reach in our region in terms of telling the story of the Big Bend region. The Museum of the Big Bend is often called the crown jewel of Sul Ross State University and also this Big Bend region. It is the first stop for anyone that is coming, particularly for the first time, to the Big Bend region, to visit that area. If you truly want to understand, put into context, and get the significance of the Big Bend region, those that really get the right advice know that the very first stop is to go to the Museum of the Big Bend. And its capacity to do that, to tell that story, to display even more in terms of art, in terms of our incredible map collection and other attributes of the museum will be enhanced significantly by this expansion. Our building is already named for Emmett and Miriam McCoy. This action will in fact assure that the entire complex then, when that's completed, will have the Emmett and Miriam McCoy name on there in recognition of their incredible support for Sul Ross State University and the museum in particular. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Kibler. And Chancellor McCall, do you have any comments you'd like to add at this time?
Not only is this the most significant gift ever given to Sul Ross, it's not the first time the McCoys have stepped up to the plate with a considerable gift for Sul Ross. You will recognize the name from Texas State as well. The McCoy College of Business Administration also is in honor of the generosity of these good people. And most recently, after the $5 million gift to Sul Ross, they have recently given $1 million gift to honor our distinguished president, Dr. Denise M. Trouth at Texas State. So This system owes a great deal to these good people, and it's marvelous that we can continue associating their name with our universities.
Thank you, Dr. McCall. Are there any questions or comments by any of the regents? Hearing none, I make the motion that Texas State University System name the Museum of the Big Bend Complex the Emmett and Miriam McCoy Building. Are there any objections to this motion? Hearing no objections, the motion passes. Our next item is a walk-on motion from the Texas State University System and Sul Ross University. It's a resolution honoring Dr. William L. Bill Kibler, president of Sul Ross State University, and conferring on Dr. Kibler the status of president emeritus. At this time, I'd like to ask Chancellor McCall to comment on this motion.
It has been my deep joy and pleasure and professional honor to have worked with and learned from Bill Kibler over these past several years. I say the same thing to everyone. He is one of the best men I know. He is a good human being and has been good for Sul Ross. And I wish him every good wish, and I'm grateful to he and Pam for what they've done and the commitment they gave to Sul Ross State University.
Thank you, Chancellor. Regents, any questions or further comments?
Just want to say thank you, Bill. You've been a wonderful person to get to know, and look forward to seeing you maybe in the future.
Thank you.
Very good. At this time, I'll ask Mike Winnemute to read the resolution. Mike.
Whereas Dr. William L. Bill Kibler has accomplished much academically, receiving his bachelor's, master's, and specialist degrees from the University of Florida, and his PhD in educational administration from Texas A&M University. And whereas Dr. William L. Bill Kibler has spent nearly 45 years in higher education, beginning in 1976 in student affairs at the University of Florida, 24 years in the Division of Student Affairs at Texas A&M University, the final year as vice president, and 10 years as vice president for student affairs at Mississippi State University before becoming the 12th president of Sul Ross State University in 2014. And whereas Dr. William L. Bill Kibler restructured the university's support organization into the Sul Ross State University Foundation Board of Directors, oversaw the receipt of 3 gifts for endowed professor positions, supported fundraising efforts by the Museum of the Big Bend, resulting in $2.5 million in gifts in 2 years, followed by a $5 million gift, the largest in the university's history, for the museum's expansion, and led development of a strategic plan through 2022 and creation of a first of its kind strategic enrollment management plan. And whereas Dr. William L. Bill Kibler, true to his roots in student affairs, had an open door policy for students, frequently inviting them to his office to chat or answer questions, and to the surprise of many, providing new students and their parents his cell phone number during student orientations. And whereas Dr. William L. Bill Kibler's life actively reflects his favorite quote by the 18th century theologian John Wesley, "Do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can." Having served as a deacon at the First Baptist Church in Alpine, and with his wife having fostered a total of 37 children over a 15-year period in both Texas and Mississippi. Whereas Dr. William L. Bill Kibler and his wife Pam, an unpaid university ambassador and volunteer in many community activities, are proud parents of 6 children. adults, Ben and his wife Karen, Zach, Kurt, and Alyssa, and the youngest two, Austin and Gracie, who are still at home, and grandparents to Brooke and Luke. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Regents of the Texas State University System unanimously adopts this resolution recognizing Dr. William L. Bill Kibler and thanking him for his service to Sul Ross State University, its students, faculty, and staff. Adopted by the Board of Regents of the Texas State University System this 21st day of May, 2020.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. And with that, it's my great pleasure to make the motion that we adopt this resolution honoring Dr. William L. Bill Kibler, President of Sul Ross University, and it be forever memorialized in the minutes of this Board of Regents and be presented to him, and that we confer on Dr. Kibler the title President Emeritus of Sul Ross State University, together with all honors and prerequisites appropriate thereto. Is there any objection or comment? Well, I'll only add that the bill, it's with great pleasure that we do this. Were we all face to face, as we'd all like to be, we'd have that photo opportunity, and both you and your lovely wife, we appreciate all you've done for Sul Ross, and thank you for all your service.
Bill, I'd like to say also, this is Charlie. It's been a joy working with you. You've been a tremendous leader and an example to all of us. And we really, hopefully you'll stay in touch with us and we'll be able to see you. From what I remember, you are going to stay in Alpine, aren't you?
We will probably split our time between Alpine and College Station. We have kids there as well, but we're definitely going to stay in Texas. That's for sure. I genuinely and sincerely, and my wife and partner Pam is here with me, and really appreciate this honor. You know, as Mike read, been in higher education for a very long time, but this opportunity to lead Sul Ross, a university and a community we've come to love very much, has been the pinnacle of that experience, and has just been a true honor and privilege for us to serve this university, this very unique university, and its people. It's truly been an honor and a pleasure, and I look forward to staying in touch with and supporting and cheering on all of you. Thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you both.
And hearing no objection, this motion passes.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Dr. Kibler.
My pleasure.
The remaining items in the miscellaneous section can be found on the consent agenda. Regents, the TSUS Foundation update and Student Advisory Board report are normally presented in person on Fridays of our quarterly board meetings. Due to the nature of this meeting, the TSUS Foundation and Student Advisory Board have provided written reports for your information. These are included in the board book on pages 505 and 507. We received an additional written update this week from the Student Advisory Board, and this was sent out to each board member yesterday. We look forward to being back with our Student Advisory Board at our next meeting in August. And our next board order of business is the approval of the consent agenda. These items are found at the end of each section of the board book. Once again, are there any objections, or would any member like to remove any item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I move to adopt all items on the consent agenda. Hearing no objections, this motion passes. Having approved the minutes and the consent agenda, the next item under general motions is an informational item outlining the dates and locations for future board meetings. Please refer to the updates on your screen. Our next quarterly meeting, as discussed earlier, is scheduled for August the 13th, 14th at Sam Houston State University College of Osteopathic Medicine in Conroe. We all look forward to touring this new addition to our system with President Hoyt, and thank all of you for attending. We wish for everyone to stay safe and healthy until we meet again. This concludes our published agenda. If there's no objection, we will now adjourn this meeting of the Board of Regents for the Texas State University System. Hearing no objections, this meeting is adjourned. And for the record, the time is 1:50 p.m.